that we will be reviewing over here. If we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse, right? On screen, if you can see there, we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse, right? And why we are writing this letter, we need to find. Actually, you can just find that the further care and assistance. So we can understand that we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse for further care and assistance. Besides that, we have no idea what this is about, right? Anyhow, so now afterward, we can go for this last part as we discussed in the yesterday class, that why it's important. For example, we can find that this is a terminal stage of cancer. Although it will give us a clear picture that we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse, let's say. Sorry. We are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse, and the patient is at terminal stage. Now, if we can quickly look toward the discharge plan, we have home visit for pressure point care, we have dietary instruction, okay, we have psychological support, right, and we have post-oral care. So this will give an idea, the 4 points in the discharge plan. So that is basically the application of the palliative care plan. So we at least know now that we are writing this letter to the palliative care nurse, and the reason of writing is to for the provision of palliative care. So this is the purpose of writing. So we are writing to the palliative care nurse for the palliative care. This is the main purpose of writing. And now accordingly, we'll select the case notes. If you can go there, let's say from top to bottom, then we started in the case notes, and we do this thing in the first 5 minutes, and you're not allowed to, use pen or pencil over there. Let's say when we see this, okay, date of birth can be written, hey, height, weight, BMI is important, and you can see that there is no other date except this BMI. So this is considered to be the today's date. In this letter was written on that date. BMI is our weight. Why BMI is important in this case beforehand? Because we just have a quick look. Basically, for the like the pressure point care, the patient is obese. Maybe it's important for the nurse for the dietary advice. Although there is no direct instruction, but still BMI is important, right? Anyhow, so afterward we can see that there is a social history. He is a retired. Sorry, she is a retired teacher. Live with her husband in Coburg, married and 3 children and grandchildren. Is it important or not? First of all, what do you think?
Right. Important.
Yeah, it is important. Why it's important? Because we are going to provide a psychological support to the patient, right? For that reason, it is important. And accordingly, we'll discuss organization. That as you can see, that this is important for the psychological support. So we would write it down where you write it down about the psychological support, this history, right? Not like a conventional pattern of letter. Okay. Then we can see non-smoker and non-drinker is something can be semi-relevant, important, negative. You can omit them as well. Substance intake, same. Seafood, yes, it's very important. As we can see there, that we have the diet plan. So with reference to that diet plan, the allergies are important. So we are going to select now. This is the second criteria. In this lecture, we discussed about first about the purpose of writing, that the first criteria of writing. Now this is the second criteria we are discussing. Applying the second filter to your letter is your selection of the case notes. Now, again, keep one thing in mind. Seeing all this history with reference to palliative care nurse and for palliative care, how do you think? What about the mother diabetes? Is it important or not?
No, sir.
No. So all the history is written over here. It's not relevant for the palliative care nurse when it's come to for when it's come when she has to provide the palliative care, right? Similarly, his personal past medical history. Now we can see there if he childhood chicken pox, is it important or not?
No.
Not
No,
important.
it's irrelevant. Mum's irrelevant. Diabetes, yes. Why? Again, for the diet and for the pressure point.
Yeah.
As we discussed now, that we have diabetes, it was important for the diet. Can you see the screen now? And for
Yes,
the
sir.
pressure point. So it's
Yes, sir.
something that we have to see that why I'm selecting this information. Do not select randomly. Okay. Now, diagnosed with breast cancer, radiotherapy followed by mastectomy, and remission of cancer in the right breast. For the palliative care nurse. Okay, we can write it down this thing, but I don't think so that this is important. What do you think? Do you think should we write it down about the radiotherapy
लिखो.
for a nurse?
Um, so can be written.
Why?
No,
I would,
sir.
Why it is
the
important for the
lick.
palliative care nurse for palliative care?
Oh,
Hmm?
सर वो लिख भी सकते हैं नहीं भी लिख सकते दोनों तरह से चल सकते.
Basically, for a palliative care nurse, for the provision of palliative care, we can just write down like she was diagnosed in 2004, and then her cancer was metastasized to the pulmonary secondaries, let's say, or we can
Hmm.
simply write down that she's at the terminal stage of cancer. That can cover all these things, right? Okay,
Yes, sir.
as they had made the diagnosis of terminal cancer. Similarly, now we have a discharge plan, pressure point care. It's important. Q4F mean after every 4 hours, right?
I'll be forward.
Pressure point care for on 4 hourly basis, like right. Daily point bath, fine. Pressure point sore dressing with dewdrop on her right buttock. So you can see organization and sequencing is very important. But we can learn from there that like the pressure point care 4 hourly, and right after that we have to mention this thing. And let's say in sequence, I would write it down. I would appreciate if you could, yeah, Mr. Harley has developed pressure sore on her right buttock. For that reason, it would be appropriate if you could monitor her on 4 hourly basis and provide her dressing with dewdrop, right? So, restructuring of the sentence is important. Don't they just start following in the sequence without understanding? So it would be technically wrong. Like candidate tried pressure point sore should be done 4 hourly, daily sponge bath should be done, pressure point dressing with dewdrop. So it's basically breaking the coherence. So what you can do is to idealize this thing starting from the pressure point care, arrange this line with this one when you are transforming the case notes. And afterward we can talk about the sponge bath. And in the last we will write it down. In case of pain, please administer tablet morphine. Right? Then start a new paragraph and write it down about the diet management and teaching. So we can see that we have to extract certain things from the above mentioned history. Let's say we can write it down diabetes over here and the food allergies as well. It's vice versa. How can we write it down? No, it's something the skill we have to show ourselves over here when you have to expand the case notes. So basically, if you can see there, we were discussing about the dietary plan. So we have to write down about the diabetes over here, right? Number one. And we also have to write it down about the food allergies over here, right? So these two things can be written. Diabetes and food allergies should be written over here, right? Afterward, we can write down about the psychological support. The same sequence can be followed. We can start with the pressure point care, like when you start writing the letter. Okay, after introduction, let's say we can make the landing approach. Do not land directly. Just try to make an approach toward the point. Let's say you are going to give the instruction about the pressure point care. So you can write it down as the patient has requested to discharge her as she want to spend the rest of her days with her family member. Therefore, it would be appropriate if you could arrange or pay a home visit for, let's say. Now we can see after mentioning this pressure point care, diet management, separately in next paragraph, we can write it down about the psychological support to the patient and the family member. So here you can add the detail of the family member and the social history, the diet, teacher, husband, work, and whatever. So this point from here, you can add on this point to there, right? Like over here. So Mrs. Harley, who has been living with blah blah family member in Kabul, she and her family would require your help. yeah, she and family required psychological support in order to allay her feeling. Then separately we can write it down about the religious aspect of the lady. And after mentioning this thing, we can mention the conclusion, right? So I hope this is clear to you now uh, regarding the selection. And in terms of organization, as you mentioned, that this sequence has to be followed. And more important thing that I want to discuss now is the transformation. Try not to use the word that has been used in the sentences. Let's say if we can see that this is pressure point KLQ4H, so we need to transform. Mr. XYZ has developed, let's say, pressure sore on her right hip rather than buttock, on her right hip, which need to be monitored on 4 hourly basis. So this is transformation. Similarly, as I mentioned for this word, in case of pain, please administer. So my tone should remain polite. I will not be having a different tone. I have to be polite in my tone, right? So then a few marker lines can be used in terms of her dietary management. It would be appropriate if you could ensure that her diet plan should follow the given instruction, which might include the diet, preferably fluids, and food in mash form, considering the fact that she's diabetic and allergic to seafood. It's a translation of the case notes. So, discussing about the genre vocabulary is important. And last is the language part. So, the language variation, like as we are doing that, we are requesting the patient, right? Or she has had diabetes since 2020, whatever the time mark for famous marker. Play with your language at the same time over here. So, I hope this is clear to you. If you like to ask any question, please feel free to ask me.